Hi everyone and welcome back to Progression to Analog. Today we're here with Ruby Justice Thelot. Hi Ruby.
Hi, Kevin. How's it going?
Good. So we met via Instagram actually, and you are a design professor at NYU, correct? And
Yes.
a cyber archaeologist and designer.
Cyberethnographer,
Cyberethnographer.
which
Okay.
is my book is called Cyberarchaeology, though what I
Okay.
do is
Okay.
cyberethnography. Very
Well, you could
confusing.
be both.
Yeah, it's very confusing. That's my fault. I should pick.
Cyberarchaeology of Checkpoints.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I should pick names that are less confusing, and names that sell better too. But that's neither here nor there.
I love it. And your recent piece with Mozilla was really interesting about connection bloat. And this is what I want to dive into a lot for this episode, because I think sometimes with Instagram, people, in my recent study, Stuck in the Screen, I found that actually people have more of a positive relationship with Instagram than we might think, although overall it can be a bit overwhelming. But this connection bloat is interesting because people are following maybe more people than they need to be. So can you dive into that a little bit and tell us what that is and what we can do about it?
Yeah. So I was very interested to know how people are using these new platforms. This came about because I realized that there was all these novel modes of interaction that I was not privy to. I'm a zillennial, and hanging out with Zoomers, I realized that there was all this sort of new language that had been developed, say like the meaning of an Instagram like. Um, I remembered specifically being told that like as a person who's trying to date, like you need to like the other person's Instagram stories, otherwise they're not gonna think you're into them. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? And so when I started digging into it, I started looking at early research on different social media, like Dana Boyd's research on My Friend and Friendster, and she also started talking about what it was something that we called PDA, or paralinguistic digital affordances, like the act of being put into one's top eight had a
Oh.
symbolic and also like social signification, which was not just mere being on a screen. It was something effective related to it.
Yeah.
And so I figured, well, if there's all this affect related to specific parts of the social media, where are the other parts where we're getting our sort of emotions kind of played with a little bit?
Yeah.
And connection was one of them, right? The dream of Facebook or of a lot of social media, social by nature, is to connect to the world, right?
Yeah.
And so we go on Instagram, we follow our friends because we want to see what they're eating, what store they're going to or where they're traveling. But over time, we started about like 300 people we follow, and we end up 10 years later from 2015 to 2025 at about 600
Yeah.
on average.
Or if you're like me, like 3,200, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I've gotten down a few hundred, but your piece made me think I need to keep going.
Well, we meet a lot of people, so that's
Yeah, right.
in our defense. But I think this slow growth in the following is what I call connection bloat. We start with a very what I would deem like earnest goal of like connecting people, getting to see the content that they want to see. But over time, there's no sort of designed reminder to call, to prune, to curate that list of following. And suddenly you're following Ariana Grande, Al Jazeera, and your ex-boyfriend. And it's all
And the friends you met through your
the
ex-boyfriend.
ex-boyfriend, exactly, who
Yeah.
you're never going to see again.
Yeah.
And all this, I think, creates what I call like a heterogeneous feed. It's like it's very hard to comprehend, and essentially
Yeah.
you're switching context all the time.
All the
And it
time.
makes it less enjoyable, right? And, I talk about this other paper from 2017 about social overload that comes with these social media feeds. And I think it's really caused by this constant context switching and the downstream effects of that connection bloat.
Yeah, and the downstream effects, I think, have a big impact in our everyday lives because we're not just seeing our immediate friends. And you did an interesting diagram. So it's friends on the inside, then acquaintance, then timeline acquaintance, and then strangers.
Yeah.
So this idea of a timeline acquaintance is very interesting because there are so many people that you might meet once or twice, and then you see what they're eating for breakfast 10 years later.
Look, you go to the, we live in New York. You go to the club, you go to the bar,
Yeah.
you're outside having a little cigarette, and then you meet someone, you have a good conversation, and then they say, well, what's your Instagram? And so
Yeah.
now you follow each other on Instagram, and that was 2018, and now they're getting married, and for some reason, I know that the wedding's happening in Portugal, but I have no connection with that person. And so I go back to sociologist Dunbar, who of course talked about Dunbar's number at 150 being kind of the amount of people you can keep up with. And of course, this is in a pre-digital world. And I think what's interesting about Dunbar's research and how I think it applies to sort of a pre-digital world is that to keep up with these individuals, you needed intent.
Yeah.
I needed to, even if I didn't know you, and say like I'm closer to our friend Jalen, I'd have to ask Jalen and gossip with Jalen to actually know what's happening in your life, to know that you just went to the West Coast. And so there's an intent, there's a desire, there's an activity, like you're being active in your acquisition of information. Whereas now, if I follow you, then I know you've been on the West Coast. And that changes, I think, the way information is shared and the way information is acquired. And oftentimes that information is just not something you would have asked for, something you would have sort of tried to acquire.
Do you think Dunbar's number changes in this post-digital world? Because the number originally was 150 people, right, that you know well, and then the max number of faces was 5,000. But the 150 number is someone that you would feel comfortable going up to in a bar and getting a drink with. So do you think that that's changed, or do you think that just based on human nature, it's not able to, and there's this overload now because of?
So I spent a couple of years building a new kind of social media app, which was for digital communities, based on a lot of my research. And my intuition at the time, my hypothesis was that Dunbar's number changed, and it was essentially capped by the amount of people on your main communication platform, i.e., if you could have 300 people in a WhatsApp group chat, that could technically become the space in which you essentially kept your close circle. A lot of my friends were in this thing in New York called the group chats, all of the downtown kids. And we can talk a little bit about this, but part of the rules was you had to share your location to be in the group chat. And so like if something was happening, you would always sort of be like, oh, this is happening, like 7 of my friends were there, I'm gonna go. And this created a novel form, I think, of social network, which was essentially the group chat. And iMessage at the time was capped at, I want to say 64 or something like that.
I don't know what it is now. What is it now?
It might have changed, but that to me determines, in parts, the amount of people, like literally the software allows you to keep up with, at least in like your pinned or your top sort of messages. What's been very obvious to me with a lot of these communication technologies, I don't have much time to talk about this in the essay, but in my research I was asking people how many unread messages they have and how many notifications they have.
Do you want to know what? Like, it's so bad. I think I'm at 3,700
messages.
Texts.
iMessages.
Texts. Actually, let's pull it up right now. My phone's in the other room. I think it's 3,500 actually. You know what? I'm gonna go get it. We are at 5519 unread texts.
Now,
actually, as we just spoke, it became 5520.
This is your podcast, so I'll not put you on blast.
No, you can. That's the whole point.
I will not put you on blast for your amount of unread messages, but I cannot. And so part of what I wanted to track in this piece, and this is, I'll probably share some of these graphs later on, it's how the average number of notifications over time also has grown significantly. And it's grown for two reasons. Not because we're communicating more through our apps, but also because we have more apps. And I'm always so stunned when I like to look at people's phones. And so I'm always so stunned when I look at someone's phone and they're getting notifications for the New York Times, for Citizen, for Facebook. And it's like just so much. Well, I'm anti do not disturb as well, because we'll talk about that in a second. And so I think I have like 15 right now. Well, probably.
That's good.
I'm an inbox zero kind of guy.
That's really good. Wow.
And I try my best to answer everything, and some of them are a bit like, they're like to-dos.
I have to say, these texts are mostly marketing texts.
So why not clear them?
It doesn't bother me.
And see,
because I keep track of everything. Like, a friend will not say, oh, you didn't answer this text, or you didn't answer this email.
I respect that, and I think that is like the main difference between me and the most people who have around, I think it's 170 unread messages.
Oh, really?
And it is just that people are able to deal with it. Part of me feels as though there is some kind of like psychic weight to it.
There probably is.
It's just like, I think 170 is a lot of things to be like.
It is.
Because to me, it means to do.
Yeah.
But if you've like forgone, if you don't have that association,
yeah,
then perhaps it means.
I think part of it is that if I open the message and I don't respond, I won't remember to respond.
Mhm.
And that to me is more pressing than leaving the notification. And so at the end of the day, I'll go through the unread things and look at it. But yeah, I think that digital junk and those notifications do carry some type of weight. But the problem I see is that how do you spend the time dealing with it? Because I also have 220,000 photos on my phone. And I love Victor Meyer-Schonberger and his book, Delete the Virtue of Forgetting in the Digital Age. And I think everything he's saying is correct. But every time that I spend large amounts of time decluttering my digital life, I feel like there's also weight to that. It's taking so much time. And also, I love a lot of screenshots, and I think that they're parts of things that I could write pieces. And just because of the nature of our work, it's a lot of it's interesting, and it's hard to strike that balance though. And so I find myself always on Do Not Disturb because when I'm working, not when I'm, in places where people could call me, but I find that to be difficult. So why are you anti Do Not Disturb?
So I'll say I want to go back to this idea of the digital junk. I think the workshop I did with Mozilla where we unfollowed people.
I love that idea though.
The first part was actually pruning a bonsai. So it was, a bit of a metaphor, like, and when you work with bonsai, the idea is that by pruning you incite growth.
Okay.
Right? You redirect the energy of the branches towards the ones you want to see grow. And that's kind of what I want people to do with social media. Look, I'm not August Lamb. I'm not going to tell you to get off your phone. But I want you to have a positive, pro-social, and generative relationship with your phone. Meaning, instead of bricking it, why don't we make your phone a garden of positivity for yourself? And what that means is curating those lists, and much like the bonsai, pruning and choosing what you want to see on your feed and who you want to interact with. Part of my thing today was like, meet your mutuals. Like, you should want to meet. I love
that idea.
You should want to meet the people who are on your feed. There's no point of hate following someone,
and you practice what you preach. You followed me, and then you said, "Do you want to get coffee?" And I think that that's a nice thing because you can then see where things go in person and have that connection and move with it. But where do you think people should draw the line? Because one of the things I like about New York is you meet someone who's interesting. You follow them, and then you never know where things might go. So, for example, I spoke at a conference in Budapest a couple years ago, and one of the people from that conference happened to post in New York. I messaged him, and then we just got coffee and might be working on something soon. So it's not necessarily someone that you see all the time, but because we were following each other, we were able to then make that in-person connection. But where do you draw the line with the unfollowing? I think you had said start with celebrities and start with brands. Yeah,
I look, I love Billie Eilish. You shouldn't be following her. You should be. She's
funny enough. She's like one of 2 celebrities that I follow because I just love her.
I look and to me, it's more like there's a. I actually don't know what she's been posting, but to me, it's like once again the psychic weight of the Instagram knack for comparison that we have. I mean, like, there's nothing. I think it's quite negative to be following influencers because. Look, we are human creatures, we are social creatures, and what we do, we compare ourselves amongst ourselves. And if I follow as a guy, a bunch of guys with Lamborghinis and yachts or whatever, that will ineluctably alter the way that I perceive the world. And I know it sounds mundane, it sounds like anodyne, like, oh no, it's just this race car driver, this person. It is my belief that exposure to these images alters the way you perceive the world.
It does.
Like, think about a world in a pre-Instagram world. In a pre-Instagram world, my parents, had a very nice life, and so if they were walking around, maybe they would go downtown and see a Ferrari, and then they're downtown at the department store. Oh, look, a Ferrari, And then you say, oh, that's a nice car, and then maybe you think about it for a little while. But a weekly or a daily exposure to that kind of disparity, I think really makes you feel as though your upper middle class life, which is very good, is lesser than because you're exposed to it. Whereas like if you just encounter it the one time you go shopping at Christmas, whatever, it's fine. Or in Montreal, there's the Grand Prix. There's one week where you see the fancy cars. And you move on with your life. But constant exposure, I think, is a nagging reminder that there are people who have more, or that people who have this and that, and it's the comparison, which of course is the enemy of happiness, as they say, right? The thief of joy. And so the celebrities, the brands, if you're a music lover like myself, I recommend following them on Spotify. You'll get a notification for their new albums.
That's true.
They have newsletters, so that's for tours and special events. You want to redirect and focus the information you get. That way, if I love Blood Orange Dev Hines, if he's doing a show, I know that the show's happening, but I don't need to know that he's like hanging out with very cool people. And I'm not invited.
Maybe just I'll follow Maddie Healy, but not every other.
Well, Maddie Healy bought my book, so that's a person you can maybe follow.
But it is true, because I think sometimes we, innocently enough, just follow someone we don't think to go and unfollow it. And so how do you recommend going through this ritual of unfollowing? Do you recommend that there's a certain period of time after which people do this reflection, like once a year, or how would you structure it? So
I've been, this has been one of my practices. There's a couple of apps that you're able to see sort of your interactions. One is called InstaClean, but part of the reason why I took the bonsai, because to me it's very much like a garden. Right now in my garden, I kind of need to go and see if there's any weeds that are growing, and if I don't do that, well, I won't have the nice sort of manicured garden that I want to have for the summer. And much like our backyards, we must till, prune, and curate our own digital gardens. So I think the base minimum is a spring cleaning, much like you would do before the summer arrives. Instagram actually already tells you the people you interact with the least. The least, that is true. And so I would go that list, and look, if there's a person on that list where you're like, that person was really interesting, then reach out. And just go get a coffee. Go, if they live abroad, like do a FaceTime. I have this wonderful friend who lives in Zurich. Nina, never met her, but like we just like every quarter be like, hey, what's up? What's happening? She's an amazing designer, amazing creative director, and we just like exchange ideas. What have we been reading? But I have never met this person, but I know that she's interesting. And so I just want to shoot the shit. I like that. So along these lines, you discussed the idea of ambient copresence and how that influences our experience online. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I think ambient copresence is so beautiful. So I kind of reappropriated the term, but originally it comes from the study of the telecommunication habits of the diaspora. Meaning, I lived in a house with high levels of ambient present. That means that my mom, when I walked inside the house after elementary school, was on the phone with Haiti. And so the phone would be on speakerphone, she'd be cooking, and essentially she used telecommunication as a portal to the homeland, as a way to create a space of comfort, in which she'd be kind of just like relating. It would be like, oh, this happened, this cousin, nothing like extremely serious, but really the presence was ambient, and they could share in their presence through the phone. Same thing now with Messenger. Even made that even easier now, because back in the days you need to buy international phone cards. Which made it more difficult. And so ambient copresence is a method of keeping closeness with your loved ones when they're not close to you. And it's a form of, I think, very beautiful telepresence. And so when I studied close friends, I saw that people were doing kind of the same thing. So in the same way, like my mom, through her very loose conversations with her cousins and sisters back home, she'd get like the latest updates. When you scroll through your top stories of your close friends, you're like, oh, okay, she's back with that guy. Oh, she's in Paris. Oh, they are, maybe they're having what does that mean? And like, you're getting some of your updates that my mom is getting from her informal sort of, once again, ambient copresence. And that has been, I think, replaced by the close friend story. Which that was Finsta came preceded it. So instead of like calling at when you're like on your way from work and getting like, oh, what's up, what's happening, what happened today. You are now doing this through the close friend story, which I think is a wonderful function of that feature. But we must not forget that though it makes it easier, there is something beautiful in like the intentional acquisition of information by the act of asking.
Definitely. And how we can develop parasocial relationships with our friends because
Yeah.
of the one-sided nature of these micro connections and
Yeah.
seeing what they're doing. And sometimes, even though it's nice to already know, that the asking is a nice part of
Yeah.
it. But I think what's interesting is that Finsta came first and then Close Friends. Close Friends is a definitely informal way of sharing, but you spoke a little bit about how it's a little bit more performative sometimes than Finsta. What is your take there, and how does that affect the social space?
Well, in the few studies, there were a couple of studies on Finsta. Researchers mentioned that like people were more revelatory. There's a sense of openness, diminished performativity on Finsta. Now, there's something interesting about setting a boundary around a new account versus having it exist in your first account.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about this like privacy management, and it's not just that you are creating a different space of visibility, but also that it's just like it's a different feed.
Yeah.
Right? Entirely.
Totally.
And once again, the feed I think also influences the way you interact with the app.
Yeah.
So if on your main feed you have Ariana Grande and on your Finsta you have your 10 friends from high school, whatever, you're going to behave differently as to what you post.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that like is kind of missed on the close friends feature, is that by not changing the feed you receive, you end up, I think, adopting the prevailing behaviors of that feed in your own close friends disclosures. Though they may be more private, more personal, there's still a sense that separation was important. Yeah.
I loved my Finsta. It was 6-1 tons of fun. And it was interesting because sometimes there are little situations that you want to comment on that you don't want to individually text your friends on, but it was this shared space that I found to be nice that isn't exactly replicated in Close Friends. But I do think the popularity of create mode and create mode accounts is interesting. It's almost a little bit like a performative Finsta. Are you familiar with these?
I think I understand what they are. They're like making macros or memes, but using the create mode on Instagram story, and it's mostly that they're posting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't studied those, but I'm familiar with the stylistic
one of my
language.
cousins is a senior or just graduated, and she had this shared Instagram account with her house, and they always post on their stories like these funny create mode things, and it's funny to see how that has grown and being used in addition to Close Friends, and just seeing. You made me think when I was reading some of your research on this. I thought to myself, I think I have 300 people on my Close Friends. Like maybe I could trim that a little bit too.
Well, that's the other thing. Like you start with a very small group because
and then you just keep adding.
Yeah, the selective disclosure is like I'm only gonna have this amount of people, and then slowly but surely connection bloat applies to all of the different portions of the platform.
Yeah.
And the physics of the main account trickle down also to Close Friends.
Yeah. And you said people are using Close Friends to recreate the limits that the platform removed.
And then now I say kind of glibly that you're going to need a close friends, because if you're closer to 100 now, you're getting close to that Dunbar number where you do need that like smaller amount where you can actually get those. Well, for Dunbar, the intimates was like the 5 or the 10. So you might still need that additional layer of visibility or privacy management.
Yeah. So what do you do with your close friends? And
I don't have a close friends.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm also just like terribly private person.
Yeah.
I don't post very much about myself, about my life.
Yeah.
It's I'm realizing it's a bit of an issue, which I'll have to deal with when the time comes. But I'm like, it's my writing, it's my work, it's my research, and it's not great as a public intellectual or / influencer. I think people want to see what you're up to.
Yeah.
It's like that's what your agent's gonna tell you.
Yeah.
But no, but I have no desire to be seen or perceived in that way.
Yeah.
And so my close friends to me is just like I will call my friends, or I have this joke where like before you tweet something, is this something you would like to text 5 people? If so, then like put them in a group chat and text it to them and see what they say.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think the idea of authenticity and what that means online has definitely evolved since 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
in the era of the Finsta, I think it was more normal and accepted, and that we would overshare a little bit online. And I think as Cambridge Analytica and this dealing of and understanding that we are just bits of data has evolved, I think that oversharing bits of our personal life is not the best, and creating that distance is sometimes really nice.
I think we're also oversharing because we were 20.
Yeah,
and
totally,
totally. Like, prefrontal cortex, like, not formed.
No,
so.
But at least now there's close friends for, I guess. Yeah. So I think that oversharing is that the distance is nice. I like it because I do post some personal things on mine, but never in real time. And I think it's nice to create some of that distance.
That's a great actual tip for good digital hygiene.
Totally.
Is don't make the story instant.
No. And I think that also takes away a lot from the experiencing of the event, because when you're projecting an event, you can't experience it in the same way. And you're constantly, even if you don't feel like you are, you're thinking about who viewed your story or how it's being perceived. And I think a great way to look at it is if you go on a trip, when you're on the plane on the way back and you have nothing else to do, okay, post a story. But if you're with your friends, it's not great to be doing
don't make
that.
the instant.
No,
Wait a second,
exactly.
let it decant.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes also, much like the lollipop or the cigarette or the whatever else that we use to soothe ourselves, the story is also sometimes to soothe. And so I part of this like more conscientious engagement of these platforms is saying, am I using this in a way that serves me, or am I being sort of utilized or used by the platform? And so when you feel like you want to post that story, why are you posting it?
And that's why taking a beat is nice, because then you're able to create it in a way that feels better to you, and it's not just projecting of it. You wrote a recent essay on looksmaxxing and the quantification of culture, and I thought that that's really interesting, and I want to talk a little bit about that, about how not only is this quantification of friendships and of connections apparent in who we follow and the number of people that we follow, but it seems like everything culturally has become math and has become quantified. And in this article that you wrote, you analyzed your face using one of these apps, and you spoke a little bit about how we have entered into, quote, the realm of the facial hyperreal. So how is this realm of the facial hyperreal also affecting the way that we perceive ourselves and the way we perceive others in this digital age?
Well, first and foremost, I want to admit that the AI face reader said that was chopped, and so that's I got a 6.9.
But according to Clavicular, and I'm sorry that I do know a lot about Clavicular, but he says that 6.9 and 7 is really good, and he says that it shouldn't be on a grading scale, because I unfortunately did see a clip of him on Logan Paul's podcast, and he gave Logan Paul a 7. And Logan Paul was really mad about it, and he says, no, that's actually a good rating. And he gave Timothée Chalamet a 7, so.
Okay. Well, it's okay. I got like an 8.9 after I mute a little bit, so.
You did? That's so funny. What did you do? You just pose differently?
Honestly, it is really just that once again, like, these apps are not correct. Like, they have no scientific basis. That you put your face in, and then you get some cool animations, but the results in and of themselves are non-scientific. Totally. And so whether I get 6.9 when I start writing the article and then I go to 8.9 by the end, I haven't done nothing different.
No.
Right? There's no, I did not mew, I did not chew mastic gum, I did not change my hair or anything, I didn't get plastic surgery. It's just, I don't know how the algorithm works, but I don't think we should trust it.
No.
Right? And so this is, I think, a prime example of seeing a number and trusting the number.
Yeah.
Right? And that's my issue with the quantification. Could the Oura ring be directionally correct as to whether or not your sleep is good? Yes. There might be some indication as to whether or not you've slept well. Should you rely only on the number to understand how you, a person with a body, slept? No, because once again, like, even from a medical standpoint, it is a very small capture of biometric data. It is just the pulse on your finger. There's so many other things going on in your body.
So many other things. And there's been some research that shows that when people's sleep scores are bad, it primes their next day to be a little bit more difficult. They're stressing out about it more. Whereas if you didn't get good sleep, you can a little bit put it out of your mind. So it begs this question of, what do we need data for, and how does it really affect our lives, and how are we quantifying things, and is that the correct way to be quantifying things, and do we need to quantify everything?
I think as I say in the essay, the desire to quantify is a desire for control, and the desire to control life is a desire for death.
Yeah.
This is from Rami. Like, this is, I do not believe that this is a sane way to approach the world. And I kind of go back, I don't have much time in the article for Essence to go like super deep into the history of why we're so fascinated with these numbers, of the quantification. There's like 2 or 3 historical examples that are very interesting to me. The first one is von Linnaeus, the Swedish biologist who came up with binomial taxonomy, which was an attempt during the Enlightenment to name every single animal. Why? Because the act of taxonomy was a way to assert dominion over the natural world. Because humans, endowed with reason, had dominion over the natural world. And how do you assert dominion? Well, you name. Name is a form of control. And after you name, you quantify, right? After you quantify, once again, quantification becomes another form of asserting control over the natural world. What I say usually when I think about looksmaxxing or our fascination with Polymarket or Kalshi is that now, well, our political world is in turmoil, our cultural world is in chaos, and what are we doing? We're naming things. I was just talking to Elizabeth Godspeed from It's Nice That, and she was asking me, why are you naming every single aesthetic online? Well, once again, it is our attempt, much like von Linnaeus, to assert dominion over the cultural world and understand it through the act of taxonomy.
Wow.
And once we name things, we feel a temporary sense of respite until the new thing comes along and sort of brings chaos again to the cultural world. So same thing with beauty, right? We spend so much time on our phones looking at our faces that now I think we don't really know what's to use the Levi-Strauss, we don't know what's cooked or what's raw. We don't know what's chopped and what's not. We don't know what's hot or so we need these systems to put order back into how do we understand what beauty is, and that's the best way we found to do it.
Well, how can we understand what beauty is outside of these taxonomies?
I don't know. I mean, I don't pretend to have like.
Is it important to? Should we have less emphasis on spending time in our everyday lives obsessing over beauty optimization? Because to go back to some of the earlier points, I find that increasingly people who wear Oura rings and are really into all of this data tend to be what I refer to as optimizers. So in conversation, they're very outcome oriented. They're wanting to speak about, oh, I did this with Claude Code, or oh, this is the outcome, or what was the point of this, or what was the point of this? Does it circularize everything, all of this, and how can we move away from it?
So for a very long period of time, there were, I think, more congealed ideals of beauty. They were represented throughout art history, and people understood beauty through the lens of which images were idealized, usually through portraiture or to sometimes even sculpture. The David is like an icon of like what male beauty could be. You look at a pre-Raphaelite painting, you're like, oh, well, like the beautiful woman with the red hair, painted by Dante Rossetti, and it's like, oh, this is an ideal of beauty. Now, when the cultural landscape becomes fragmented, once we no longer have a clear sense of who is the hot person of the year, right? I think there's even a list, right? The sexiest man of the, like I remember like Jude Law as an afford on that. So once that's no longer clear, once people will say, well, okay, no, look, Pete Davidson's hot, but also Leonardo DiCaprio's hot, and then it's just confusing. If you spend time online and you are a mimetic individual, meaning that you base your sense of preferences and aesthetics on what you see in the digital realm, then it's going to be very, very confusing because you'll be told that the person from Love Island is hot, but at the same time Pete Davidson is hot, but at the same time Leo DiCaprio, but not this other person who you thought was hot 2 years ago. And then they'll tell you like the dad bod is in, and also your man needs to be a little chopped. And like at every week there's a new thing, and so like there's no cohesive sense of what beauty should be. Once again, it is cultural chaos, and what this looksmaxxing does through its taxonomy and quantification of beauty says like, now I have a number, and that becomes the absolute, because the rationalization, the quantification, provides a sense of absolutism of what is aesthetic and what is beauty. Now, I think it's incorrect, but that's a social function, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. And it's this social function of quantification and integration into our everyday lives is also really apparent in AI. And I think you've had some really interesting takes on AI. This is actually the video where I found you. You said advancements in tech don't matter if eggs are $9. And you also spoke about in your Substack AI saying that 50% of Americans rate risks of AI as high, yet there is this cultural obsession with quantification, with AI. How do we reconcile those two, and what can we do to move forward in all of this?
Well, so when we talk about people not liking AI, I think one of the main retorts that I hear from people like Mark Andreessen is like, well, ChatGPT has like, 1 billion users now, like fastest growing product in the history of technology. And my sense is that for this, I interviewed people who were across the United States who were using AI. A lot of people are using it like Google, meaning the sort of building, replacing, or augmentation is not really the main use case, right? Even in the Anthropic survey where they surveyed 85,000 people,
crazy,
right? You see that like a lot of it is for work, like helping you do your job and whatnot. There's a little bit of life management and the third thing being like personal chat, like how trying to kind of like a pseudo therapist. But I don't believe that these are the reasons why people dislike AI. I think it actually works quite well for these three functions. You can put a meal in, connect your Instacart connector, and then they could get your things and get them ordered for the next day. That works.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the thing that's, I think, a little bit more worrisome is when you start talking about the total replacement of human labor, or if you're a doomer, like existential risk. And it's like, why would you tell people they're going to lose their jobs? I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't recommend going on national television telling the Americans that they don't like that.
No.
Why would you tell people that it might end the world? That's also a very strange thing to say. Especially when you have no proof that it's going to, or your proofs are conjectures and hypotheses that are like impossible to prove, and you have the onus probendi, you have the burden of proof, and you're not actually doing that work. Very strange behaviors, I think, from some of the AI leaders. Now, I think some of these risks are valid in that, like, they are worthy of being explored, but it's giving Boy Who Cried Wolf a little bit. And for the most part, your goal as a designer, like myself, as a technologist, is how can I make people's lives better?
Yeah.
And building tools, once again, in ways that enable them to have a better life. And what you're telling people when you say, this might kill all of us, is that you're not really trying to make their lives better.
Yeah.
Because you're the maker. So, like, how, just figure it out kind of thing, right? And that's what's very worrisome to me. That's what I think a lot of Americans relate to the loss of capabilities. They care a lot about education, and they feel like if kids can't read or if they can't think for themselves, that's very dangerous. And so those lack of capabilities is once again like a devaluation, I think, of human aptitude, which we should not be rooting for, right?
No. And one of the things that's happening is even at elite institutions like Harvard, Penn, a lot of students don't have jobs after graduation, and yet a lot of commencement speakers, as we saw online, were speaking about AI, and then it kind of turned and people were speaking about how the human is great, and this a little bit about this progression to analog, how analog can come into it. What do you think analog and human capabilities and design, or what advice would you give to younger people to hone some of these skills, or what can they do to differentiate themselves or find that creativity or those spaces of human worthiness in this ever quantified era where it's more and more difficult to find what your vocation might be? Because I know when I was in college, or when I graduated 10 years ago, people were able to plan out a year and a half in advance. Oh, I got this internship, and now I can just use that space and time and senior year to just be creative. Well, now there was a TikTok I saw yesterday with NYU grads, and some people were saying they applied to 100, 400 jobs. And so it's just this it's repeating and repeating, but where does this value of the analog come in balance with technology? How do we find that?
I mean, my students, I teach in grad school at NYU, and so in the in the engineering school, so some of my students were in that position. Okay, the first thing is, don't believe the atheists. Um, AI is a technology; it's a tool, and you have a perspective on the world on what that world should be.
Mm-hmm.
Your role as an engineer, as a designer, is to think of a utopia, to think of an ideal world, of an ideal situation, and bring that situation to fruition.
Yeah.
And those tools are perfect to do that.
Yeah.
You have the amazing perspective to say, one of my students is from rural Nepal, and she saw that there are people who the rates of strokes was increasing over time there.
Wow.
And there was very little care or very little care available in the rural areas. She used AI to build a speech training tool. You read the numbers, the same exercise she worked with speech therapists, the same exercise you would do with a speech therapist, now you can do remotely with an on-device LM that like does mouth tracking and whatnot.
Incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
The tools are fantastic. I think kids should find problems in the world and then use the tools to fix them.
Yeah.
But
in a more socio-technical way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is like, let's say 500,000 people who will most like who will have an amazing improvement in their life by using that tool.
Yeah.
And that tool is using AI. I'm by no means anti-AI. I think it's really great. I'm anti nonsensical claims, right?
Yeah.
I'm anti sort of rampant corporate greed to like lay off and rehire and like spend more on tokens than you do on human labor.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing that came out recently.
I think, you know, as a person who works in tech, who hires people and who runs a team, like part of your mission as an organization is also to build a pipeline of talented people who will lead your organization.
Yeah.
And I felt like we always understood it's not just like right now. You need to think 10 years down the line, who will lead your organization when the people who are there.
Yeah, because there's no pipeline if it's all agents.
Yeah. And not only that, like if your current people who are running the agents, they're going to retire in 30 years. Who will take their place?
Definitely.
And more importantly, the people who are there, who are my age or much older than I am, who are in these positions of power at these companies, well, there's a new batch of problems that they don't have a perspective on. The new grads, of course, bring in energy, they bring in vim, but also they have new perspectives which can help stir the company. That's why companies, like I started at Amazon, we used to have like hackathons and like, what do you want to do for like a week or for the summer and whatnot. And these ideas can help stir your companies into new markets, new verticals, and help with the overall growth. Like it's not just an investment into useless new grads. The new grads have a corporate function in training, in establishing the future leadership of the company and bringing in novel and fresh perspectives.
Definitely, and I like what you said there about focusing on problem solving and looking for problems, having that curiosity, honing it, and then using that to design different solutions. I think that's very important. And as we close our conversation, I want to learn a little bit more, for the audience's sake, about your design practice and some of the things that you're interested in right now. I know that you wrote a book called A Cyberarchaeology of Checkpoints, and one of the things that you spoke about in the book was surfers and people surfing the web, finding a sense of place and what that was like. So first, a little bit about your book, and then I want to hear if there are any interesting problems or things that you're looking at researching right now.
Yeah, my book is about a YouTube video that was deleted in 2021 by YouTube. The video was there for about 10 years, from 2012 to 2021. The name is in kanji, so I can't name it, but it's essentially a video of Donkey Kong Country 2 on the SNES, one of the levels, and it's got the little vines and the clouds, and there's a song, and it's about 2 hours, and it's by an account named Taya777. And under that video, for over 10 years, people would post life updates called checkpoints. Checkpoint, I just got my first girlfriend. I've never felt like this before in my life. Checkpoint, my dad just passed away. And they'd come back every year, every 6 months, every time the algorithm would push that video towards them. And so there was a very serendipitous thing where people had heard about the video and they'd say like, finally, I'm on the checkpoints video. Like it was a digital serendipity.
Yeah. And
they would use that serendipity to divulge, to be revelatory about their own lives. I thought it was very, very beautiful. And essentially, about 30,000 comments.
Wow, 30,000.
Yeah. Over 10 years were lost. And to me, that was...
10 years?
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah, this was... these are, I care a lot about people and about their stories, and to me
Yeah.
it was very tragic to see
Oh,
that archive of of human experience be lost to a DMCA takedown notice, right?
oh,
Luckily, as a part of the book, I retrieved the archive, I retrieved the
oh.
comments, working with a Reddit user named Rebane2001 who lives in Estonia, and she had saved the video along with the comments and has her own practice as a
Incredible.
data preserver slash data hoarder who saves a lot of videos on YouTube along with the metadata and the comments.
Wow.
She runs an archive called Hobuni.stream. Go check it out and go support it. It's amazing. And the book is really about these two concepts of digital experience, one being the shock of deletion, which is when you encounter a thing that you've loved on the internet that's now gone, whether it's a platform or a piece of content, or the shock of alteration, which is when you go on a platform and you're like, oh, now the feed is like this, the feed is algorithmic, or they change the buttons around. And the shock of alteration is very important because the UX of the platform influences the way that you ingest the content,
Yeah.
right? The frame changes the way that you see
Yeah.
things, and when the frame changes, it alters your experience.
It really does.
And so if you see an image 5 years ago in the old Instagram versus now,
Yeah.
that has different emotional valence and power.
Yeah.
And so the shock of alteration is this event, this phenomenon by which when you encounter something online and it's changed, you usually have no say in that change. And so that was, you know, a couple of years of my life kind of doing that research, writing that book. It was based on my graduate thesis, and it ended up becoming a sculpture that I showed at in Toronto at Interaccess, and ended up also being a project for design. I'm Canadian, at Design Toronto as well.
Wow.
I find that I'm a little bit of a romantic when it comes to these things. I've a lot of affection for the simple things that make us human, and these stories, you know, we talk about humanity and how that's being put into question now with AI, but I read through the checkpoints, I'm like, that's us.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
It
You
is.
know, we tell our stories wherever we can find them. A big inspiration for the kind of theorization of the YouTube comment was an essay by Shannon Mattern called Of Mud, Media, and the Metropolis. And in it, she talks about the city walls as being not only a substrate for building, the mud, but a substrate for writing. She goes into these early Roman walls, and you see inscriptions and graffiti. And to me, our urban city of all these different platforms, well, the comment section becomes those city walls where we leave our mark and our inscriptions. And that's a sign of life.
It is.
And that's a sign of humanity.
Yeah. And what does the shock of deletion do to people when they're interacting with these spaces, then encounter it and it's gone?
I mean, honestly, the reason why Rebane started saving videos is because she faced the shock of deletion. She had a video that she loved, her and her friend online, once again, a person she had never met, but they shared a mutual affection for that video. So much so that when the video was deleted, her friend sent her flowers from wherever they lived to Estonia to commemorate that loss, right? And then based on that loss, she decided that this was not going to happen again. And she has a very beautiful sentence, which I have in the book, which is, forget what you lost, save what you can. And now she has over 1 million YouTube videos saved on her personal hard drives at home. And about 10 or 20% of that on Hobuni.stream.
And there's a ritual element and a digital sense of place that we find in these places where we're constantly going and seeing, and the digital spaces where they're saved do shape the way that people are interacting and forming some of these thoughts. I know that with Vine, that was something where people felt very sad about that being deleted and those spaces. And then when the archive was going to be deleted, I remember I downloaded all of my videos and put it into a drive, and every single, you know, all these different archives of things. And I've always found it funny, differences with friends where I have every text message that I've sent since, I think, 2012 saved in different archives of mine, and people think that that's crazy, but I don't know. I think it's an interesting web of our digital lives. That's sometimes you remember eras of having more of these checkpoints, if you will, more clearly than the times when we don't. And this goes with Victor Meyer-Schoenberger's research in that it can work both ways. So these checkpoints and these archives can be good, but also when do we stop saving? When do we find that limit?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about checkpoints is that it's when it wasn't in like the database that I built in a JSON file or whatnot. It's very hard to search through. It's a YouTube comment section. It's not made to be all looked at, really. And so the interface itself was not productive to like retrieving a previous comment, but it was there for you to just add on, just be part of that
Just
essentially
elongated,
project. Yeah.
Like a communal space and a communal
Exactly.
project,
And building the scroll instead of going back and find it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know that it was meant to be sort of go back and read. It's more for you to go and be a part of that project. Yeah, it's additive more than something you were supposed to query. Yeah.
Are checkpoints something that you're still looking into and researching, or are there other areas of the digital world that are exciting you right now?
So, I mean, the preservation efforts never really die. You know, there's so many parts of the internet that are at risk of being lost every single year. I had the chance to meet Jason Scott at the Internet Archive recently this year, and they do amazing work. I had the chance to work with Dr. Matthew Kirschenbaum of University of Maryland, who works with the William Dickey estate, who's been retrieving his digital poetry. And so through different projects, I always have this sort of, I like to say that I'm fascinated by memory, like I'm obsessed with memory. So a lot of my work is like me trying to fight oblivion and death, alas, but you know, it's quixotic, it's in vain, but I can't stop doing it. And so yeah, you know, even right now I'm working with the James Baldwin estate in a similar project to sort of build a cleaner view of like all of his digital archive and videos and whatnot. So
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So aside from these digital archives, what does your phone habits look like? I like to close with some of the questions around this. And what is any advice that you could give to the audience around how they can build a better relationship with their phone to get into these creative spaces and creative realms?
I mean, it's your phone. You should do things that on it that make you happy. I'm on Do Not Disturb as we speak right now, because I've been getting a lot of spam calls.
Me too. So annoying.
Yeah.
The past couple months.
Yeah. I don't know what's happening, but usually I'm anti Do Not Disturb because I want my friends to know, almost like kind of symbolic that I'm open to at any time. Like you can call me, you can reach me, but I have all notifications turned off.
That's a good tip.
So I think I get calls and text, but all the rest is off. Actually, I just added a new one, and I have to figure out how to best serve me. I just bought a house, so I have a Ring camera now, and so I'm getting all these Ring notices about people walking on the street. And I'm like, I don't need to know this, and so I have to figure out now through the app, through the settings, how can I actually make this that only when somebody presses the button. Once again, you run the app don't run you. Right?
And sometimes taking those extra steps to customize it makes a big difference.
And figuring out, like, it's going to take a few weeks. It's just only been 2 months. It's going to take a few weeks to figure out, should I change this setting, that setting? And then I'll make it easy, right? So that's one thing that I need to do for sure to make sure that but no Instagram notifications. No Twitter notifications, no... and for the most part, I try to get to, for my own sake, to inbox 0 for my principal on my email, and then for my texts. And then I have all these rules. I have only 10 minutes of Instagram per day.
Okay.
I have an hour of Twitter. I do like a weekend of TikTok per month.
Okay.
That's an amazing weekend. You know, I just I have as unlimited for one weekend. Then I try to reduce my media consumption to like only things that I really want to see. So no TV, only 12 movies per year. I've never had a streaming service.
Wow.
I was kind of anti-streaming. I'm back on streaming now because Apple's made it very difficult for me to actually put my music on the phone. Like my MP3s, I'm trying to put them on the phone, and it was honestly so difficult and so hard
that you went back.
I went back. Like the UX was hostile to my wanting to be a steward of my own music, so I had to go back. But so I have Apple Music for my music, and that's kind of like as much as I want. And then unlimited books, right? For as much as for the most part, if I go back home and I don't have anything to write or any work to do, I'll just kind of go into my book. And if you love images like myself, a thing I could highly recommend is picture books or art books. You know, like
art books are great.
So
the art book fair in New York is amazing, and LA, and I think they have one in Vancouver too.
It's amazing. So instead of scrolling, which is sometimes very fun because you get to see things you haven't seen before.
Visually.
you buy like an old
Yeah.
1990s architectural
Yeah.
digest or something like that, and you're just looking through.
Yeah.
And I'll even have a bookmark by my bedside. If I
Yeah.
want to go back to an image, I'll like put a bookmark on
Yeah.
it, and so I'll go back to an image or
Yeah.
photographers that I love, and that's like my way of like engaging with images in a more intentional way. And it was
like
funny with my
that.
interior designer. I was like, we're not gonna do Pinterest, but just come to my house now. I'll give you these magazines that I
Oh, I
bought.
like
and
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, at Left Bank Books, one of my favorite bookstores, I got this book a couple weeks ago of Moderna Muse's relationship with New
Mhm.
York, and it has a lot of pictures and images in it. So it's a nice way if you don't want to get back into one of the books that you're reading to just
Mhm.
flip through some of the photos. So I think that's a good tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could speak to you for hours, but this was really great. How
Thank you so
can
much.
our audience keep in touch with you?
I'm on the internet across as being online, being_on_line, and yeah, that's the best way to find me. Being
Alright.
online,
Love it.
YouTube, Instagram, and Substack.
Great. Thanks, Ruby.
Thank you so much.